start Nehemiah today. Okay, so
Ezra 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, Ezra 3, pretty much. So remember what we said before was that it's one book. Okay, Ezra and Nehemiah is one book, and we went through all of Ezra the last 2 weeks, which is 10 chapters. That's pretty much Ezra 1 and 2. Okay, so let's all turn to Nehemiah, and just an overview. Remember, the Israelites wanted a monarch. Okay, they compared themselves to other nations, and then they said to themselves, "We want a king too." God's like, "All right," and that didn't go their way, because the problem with a monarchy is that if you have a good monarch, it'll be good for a bit, but if you have a bad monarch, it won't be good. And the chances are, if you study history and different kings and monarchs, most of them were corrupt. Most of them were evil. One person is not meant to carry that much power. One person is not meant to have that much fame or prestige, or because it corrupts the human heart. Okay? And the first king of the nation of Israel was Saul, and Saul was not a good king, as we know. The second king of the nation of Israel was David, and he, sad to say, we're going to talk about this later, but in the whole history of Israel, I think that was the only time there was actual peace. Like from the very Genesis, from the very beginning of Jewish history till today, like there's just been consistent opposition.
Like peace?
David, King David, where he wiped out all the enemies, and he's like, all right, I'll give it to my son Solomon. But then through Solomon, maybe David and Solomon together, Solomon just had nothing. You know, when you have no work, you fall into pleasure. And Solomon's a class example of that. He just had, who am I going to defeat? My dad wiped out everyone, right? So they were an empire at the time with David because they wiped out everyone. And then through the sin of Solomon, through his women and all that, his heart became corrupted. And what we know is that his son Rehoboam and Jeroboam, or some other guy named Jeroboam, there was a split. And that split was prophetic because there was someone that prophesied over, hey, you guys have to pay for the sins of Solomon, right? The man of wisdom. And what happened was that there was Rehoboam who took the south and Jeroboam that took the north. And the northern tribes, they just did not follow God one bit. Okay? King after king, monarch after monarch, it was just idolatry. And then God eventually wiped them out in 722 by the Assyrians. He raised up through the Assyrians an empire before Babylon, and then they wiped them out. And then what happened after that? God raised up Babylon. Now Judah, the south, there was a part where they were really seeking the Lord. There was good kings, but as time went on, they fell into idolatry, and God raised up Babylon in 586. He used the Babylonians to wipe them out, and now what we have is this group of if you ever wonder what happened to the northern tribes of Israel, right? There's 10 tribes. What happened? Well, they kept intermarrying and they kept falling to idolatry, and they became very progressive. And I'm using the term progressive as we know it today, is that they became very liberal, meaning that they would believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They believe in the God of Islam. They believe in the God of Buddhism. They believe in the God of Mormonism. They believe the God of atheism. They're like, wait, that doesn't make it contradicts. But that's the point. And they eventually just got wiped out. So if you look on the map, it'll say Judah or Israel, and it'll say Samaria on top. And Samaria is a northern tribe because they just disintegrated. Okay, and then the south, obviously we know from the book of Daniel, they were under the captivity of King Nebuchadnezzar, but the prophecy was after 70 years they would eventually go back, and that's exactly what happened. And we know from Daniel chapter 5 of King Cyrus, he invaded Babylon, and he took over Babylon in one night, and then he says, he made a decree in Ezra chapter 1, you are able to go back to your nation, you're able to go back to, it's a province technically, of Persia, but it was Israel, and rebuild your temple, I'm going to fund you to do it. Okay? So, from Daniel 5 the book of Ezra and Nehemiah go hand in hand, because it's sorry, it just shut off. Give me one second.
Oh wait, are you supposed to be recording it?
It's recording,
Okay.
but the online, it just disconnected.
Oh, cool. Did it come back home?
It's coming back. It says it's connecting, so I'm gonna wait.
I get by the modem too, that's weird.
What happened to it? The modem, what happened to it?
Nothing, I said we're sitting there like that.
Oh, yeah,
Good,
exactly.
good.
Yeah, there was a disconnection. That's okay. Hi, Jenny. Okay, so what's that?
I thought you said hello. I said hello.
Oh, hi, Jenny. Hi, Jenny. No, there was a disconnect, so you guys just shut off.
I noticed.
Yeah. So we're in Nehemiah right now. Okay. Now, remember when the Israelites were this is like connected to Daniel. The book of Daniel, Ezra and Nehemiah are so connected. But think of Daniel when they were in there for 70 years. There wasn't just one group of people that went out. There are 3 different groups. Okay? So the first group from it was Ezra 1-6, and that's 536, and that was under our friend Zerubbabel. And his goal was to build the temple. Okay? And then 70, 80 years later, Ezra comes by in 455, and this is Ezra 7-10, which we went on last week. So again, that's like 2 different generations. Like they didn't even know each other. And then about 10, 15 years later, there's a third group that's sent out, and it's a third wave by Nehemiah, and his goal is to build the temple. So if you think about Ezra and Nehemiah, the key word is rebuild. First group, they rebuilt the temple. Second group, they rebuilt the people. Ezra was a prophet, or he spoke the word of God. And third group, which we'll talk about today, is Nehemiah, and that's his goal is to rebuild the walls. Okay, so let's all go to Nehemiah, and we're going to look at chapter 1. Okay, Nehemiah chapter 1.
It says the report from Jerusalem.
What's that?
It says the heading report from Jerusalem.
Got it. Yeah, mine says the report. Can someone read verses 1 to 3? 1 to 3 of Nehemiah 1.
In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, "Those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire."
Okay, so here, verse 1, we have Nehemiah, who's introduced. Okay, and then, which means God comforts. And then he says, now it happened, the month of Chislev. Okay, and it says in the 20th year. So remember, there's the Jewish calendar. Okay, the month of Chislev is the 9th month. Okay, so it's pretty much our version of September. Okay, so it's pretty much September, and it says the 20th year, and that's 444 BC under King Artaxerxes, if you do the math. And it says, I was in Susa, the citadel. Okay, now, if you're one...
Susa was the same place in Esther, right?
Yes.
I mentioned it somewhere.
And Daniel. So remember, Daniel wasn't in Susa. He was in Babylon, but he had visions of him in Susa. So I had a vision. I was in Susa, and then you're right, Esther, right? And so let's go. If we look at Esther, who was king of during Esther's time? Xerxes, and he was a king before Artaxerxes, the guy here. So if you think about it, Esther was just one king before this guy.
Oh.
Yeah. So we have Cyrus, and then Cambyses after that, and then there was one guy after that, and then there was Darius, and after Darius then there was Artaxerxes. So Artaxerxes, have you seen 300? or 300, the film.
Yeah.
That's during, he's the grandson of Cyrus. And then after this, we have Artaxerxes, okay, who is the king here. But remember, Susa was just southeast of Babylon, okay, and it was a location where the Persian monarchs usually resided, either there or Babylon. So it was very luxurious, and what happened was that Darius built a temple there. He built a beautiful temple there, and the remains are still there. If you look at the slides that I sent you guys, like the first one, I think one of them is Xerxes, and one of them is a ruined temple. But that is still in existence today.
This one?
That's Artaxerxes. Okay.
Oh, this one?
That. So that right there is this right here, which is crazy. So the text we're reading right now, the remains still exist.
Wow.
Yeah, that it was built
You
by.
took that picture?
What's that?
Did you take that picture?
No,
Oh.
it's in Iran. Okay, so again, the building that we're reading today, where he was in Susa, the citadel. So
the Citadel is that picture?
yeah,
No way.
that photo you're seeing is this building right here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's 2,500 years ago, or 400 years ago, 2,400 years ago. Well, and you know the word citadel? It's a Egyptian temple or a castle. So if you go on the 5, what's the famous mall you'll see? The Citadel Outlet Mall.
Oh,
Yeah.
Citadel Outlet Mall. So, and you'll notice if you go to the Citadel Outlet Mall, they actually have Persian, Babylonian carvings. Obviously it's fake, but like you'll see the god, the Babylonian god there with the wings, and if you see it at the very front, or even if you go into the food court, you'll see all the
It's
carvings
so
there.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder what that means. Like,
What was that?
I wonder if that's significant. You know, like if it has any like sway.
It was probably just the owner wanted to make it thematic. I doubt there's any like I know the one in Hollywood did. Remember Hollywood, where we talked about Babylon in the book of Daniel. Like I sent you guys the photos of Hollywood, but you know it's gone. I don't know if you knew that. I still can't believe no one knew. When I was in Canada, I sent you guys the photos and no one knew.
Knew what?
But it was in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
It was Ishtar Gates. The Ishtar Gates was like the very beginning, the front of the temple of the god of Marduk, which is the Babylonian god. And it was meant, the original owner, okay, who built the whole thing, the whole emphasis was, if you go to the Ishtar Gates, it leads to the Hollywood sign. And the whole point was, it was a seat of idolatry. That was based upon a film that was like more than 100 years ago, and the reason why they took it down was obviously there's a new owner, but it's unbelievable. It's affiliation with racism nowadays.
The Ishtar Gates?
No, so what happened was the guy that originally made it, who's long gone dead, his dad was part of the KKK,
Oh, okay.
and this is more than 100 years ago. So his dad was part of the KKK, and then his son built the Ishtar Gates based upon a film. So, you know, in 2020, everything was racism. Like, you know what I mean? Like everything was, you know, my coffee's a little cold, that's racism, right? Like I have a tweak in my back, that's racist. Like everything was racist, you know? So they got rid of it. But anyways, if you went to Hollywood, especially the Hollywood and Highland, the emphasis was Babylon. Okay, so let's continue. Now here we have Nehemiah, and his brother comes along and he gives him a report. Okay, and here's the report in verse 3. He says, and then they said to me, the remnant there is the province who has survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates are destroyed by fire. Okay, that's the report. Okay, now can someone read verse 4 to 11? Verse 4 to 11, chapter 1.
As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven, and I said, O Lord, God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant that I now pray before you day and night for the people of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins of the people of Israel which have sinned against you, even I and my father's house have sinned. We have acted very corruptly against you and have not kept the commandments, the statutes, and the rules that you commanded your servant Moses. Remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the peoples. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though your outcasts are in the uttermost parts of heaven, from there I will gather them and bring them to the place that I have chosen to make them dwell there. They are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand, O Lord. Let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant, to the prayer of your servants who delight to fear your name, and to give success to your servant today, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man. Now I was cupbearer to the king.
Interesting. So we have Nehemiah, who is he hears a report from his brother, and his brother came from Israel or Jerusalem, and gave him a report. And the report was the walls are destroyed; they haven't been built; they're broken down. And it says in verse 4. What does it say in verse 4? As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for what? Days.
That would be like the World Trade Center getting attacked or something.
Yeah, probably more personal.
Yeah.
Way more, maybe like the White House. Yeah. And I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. Wait. Why is Nehemiah so sad? Why is Nehemiah so sad?
I don't know.
So
He
wait.
came to rebuild.
So remember this. Nehemiah has never been to Jerusalem because he's in Persia.
Yeah, because he chose to stay.
So he's one of the Jews that stayed behind, and then he hears a word from his brother who was there. His brother was probably most likely one of the ones that went with Ezra, okay? Because it's only 15 years later. He comes back and he says, "Yeah, walls are destroyed, or there are no walls." And then now Nehemiah is grieving and he's crying out for days. Remember, he's a bartender, pretty much of the king, or he's works with the king. Very comfortable life, very good life, but now he's mourning.
Yeah, because it's like the good life is kind of like a mirage, and then he sees the reality. It's like, oh, now my whole family could be slaughtered.
Mm-hmm. Remember, to a kingdom, and this applies till today. If there were no walls, there was no order. Okay, if there was no walls in a kingdom, there was no order. Without walls, you have what? Chaos. Okay, if you have a nation, if you have a location, and it has no walls, there will be chaos. Okay, this is a principle throughout human history. Okay, it's not a conservative principle that we've heard in the last 5 years, or it's a principle throughout history. If you have no walls for a nation, there will be chaos. Okay, just look at the southern border. Okay, if you have a mansion and there's habitual theft in the area, and you have a mansion, you have valuables inside and loved ones, guess what you're going to do?
Fortify it.
You're going to fortify it. You're going to have security. You're going to build gates and walls, and etc. You're going to have guard dogs, right? It's just a general principle. Proverbs 25:28 says, like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. Okay, so Solomon is implying, like, if there's a city and the walls are been broken down, it's like a person without self-control, implying that a city or a nation without walls is not good, right? Because anything can come in and out. All right.
What proverb was that again? We've read that before.
We did when we were talking about self-control in the book of Proverbs 25:28. Proverbs 25:28. Okay, so this is why Nehemiah is brokenhearted, is because he knows that there's disorder in his nation. It's it's almost similar. If you are an American that loves your nation, okay, and say you live in Japan and you look at your phone and you look at the news all the time of as far as illegal immigrants walking in and out of the nation, and you love the nation, chances are you're heartbroken, right? Because there's utter chaos. Okay, Nehemiah is experiencing the exact same thing. Okay, but it's a little different with Nehemiah because it's spiritual. There's no spiritual significance with the southern border. There's a spiritual significance here because it represented the walls would protect the very essence of the presence of God. Okay, he quotes later on. He says, "Remember the word," when he's praying. Okay, in verse 8, "Remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying." And he quotes, and what he does is he quotes Deuteronomy chapter 30, 1-5. Okay, and then he says later on, let's skip to verse 10. They are your servants and your people whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. O Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant, to the prayer of your servants who delight to fear your name, and give success to your servant today. And grant him mercy in the sight of who? This man. Which man? Who are we talking about here? This man. Well, he says later on, now I was a cupbearer to the king. Okay, so now we have the man is the king. And who we'll know later on is by the guy by the name of Artaxerxes, who you have, there's a photo of him or a carving, an image of him. Okay, so Nehemiah was the cupbearer to Artaxerxes. And the thing was, if you were a cupbearer, it was a very risky job. Very risky. Well,
Somebody could poison him.
it was very common for monarchs, especially Persian monarchs, to be assassinated. Okay, so do you know there's Artaxerxes? Remember our friend Xerxes, the one above him, Esther Xerxes, the guy from 300. He was assassinated. So the monarch before Artaxerxes was Xerxes, and he was assassinated. Now, what was very common was, how would you assassinate a monarch? Poisoned. Okay, you'd poison the king. The problem, the thing is with Nehemiah is this: if you were the cupbearer, every single time you served the king wine or whatever it was, you're gonna taste it. Okay, and if there was poison in it, Nehemiah would have took the hit, and he would have been dead. Okay, but if Nehemiah fell into fear and didn't taste it, right, and he gave the king, and the king drank it, and he died because he was poisoned, Nehemiah would get executed. So either way, death is waiting. It was a very risky job. It was a very risky job. Okay, what's right? If you study Alexander the Great or just the Macedonian Empire, there was left and right assassinations through being poisoned. And this is why I remember I was talking about how Vaistian, his best friend, who was old in his late 20s, Alexander the Great was 32, 33 years old. How do you, you're so athletic, but you die, right? And it's, again, there were multiple assassinations through being poisoned through drink. Okay, now...
But who would prepare it, though, that they wouldn't... It's just weird how they could poison someone like that.
Oh, you want to know who?
Who?
His friends.
Oh.
And that's the scary part. Well, remember the Macedonian Empire? Remember how it was divided into 4 kingdoms? It took 22 years. And those were all his friends, his generals. The kids he grew up with. Like, they were all under Aristotle, and they were... Remember, when someone's so successful or very powerful, it's like the envy inside people just... it really rots the bones. So what I'm saying is, like with Alexander the Great, he was a hit overnight, meaning that it didn't take 30 years for him to get famous. His conquest was only 12 years. But what I'm saying is that even within the 12 years, he was so successful that his friends, that were just wanting the same power, I guess, right? So I think in the Bible, remember our friend Joseph? Remember he had in jail who? There was a cupbearer and there was a baker, right? So obviously the cupbearer survived and the baker, got executed. But again, the concept of it was a very risky job if you were a cupbearer because of the multiple assassinations. Okay, so and it's mainly in the Persian Empire. Okay, this would happen. So now Nehemiah, he's brokenhearted. And this is a sign of a good leader, okay? Is that he cares. Like, Nehemiah has every excuse just to be comfortable, to have nothing to do with people, to act like, because he's right beside the king, and he can boast about it. He doesn't care. He's brokenhearted. He's never even been to Jerusalem, okay? He's brokenhearted over the things that break God, okay? Remember that? So there's this famous song, "Break my heart for what breaks yours."
Mm-hmm.
Break my heart for what breaks yours. All of us can be brokenhearted in this life, and just because you're brokenhearted doesn't mean you're repentant before God. The question is, what are you brokenhearted for, right? I can desire something of my own self, and it doesn't happen. I can be brokenhearted, but that doesn't mean I'm brokenhearted before God, right? And Nehemiah is brokenhearted over the things that break the heart of God, right?
But I don't think that God was brokenhearted about the gates of Jerusalem being destroyed. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe it's more like a spiritual thing.
remember Ezra? Remember how it took them so long? It took them, and he sent Haggai and Zechariah the prophet, and the whole point of it was, hey, you guys are concerned about your own house, and you're not concerned with the house of God.
Oh, okay.
Right, and now that's the message of Haggai and Zechariah was, you are so focused on your own personal comforts that you neglect the house of God. So I think it just sat there for 16 years. No one built it because they were, how's my paint? My room, my carpet, right? They were so consumed with themselves, and then now another 15 years goes by, right? So Nehemiah is brokenhearted. Okay, so. David repents in Psalm 51:17, says, "The sacrifice of the Lord is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart you will not despise." Okay? There's a difference between brokenhearted for your own self, for the things that you want, versus someone violated God. And it shows a good leader. When someone violates God, they're brokenhearted. They live outside themselves. Okay? Any questions?
I think that you can be brokenhearted over your own sin, because in that same verse he was saying the people have been crooked and all this stuff, but I feel like the wall is broken and burning, but it's the people are sinful. So I think God's more concerned. I don't know. I'm not God. I'm just assuming that God's more brokenhearted about these people don't love me versus a wall,
Yeah, but the fact that there was no wall implied that they didn't love him.
No.
You know what I mean? You put the two and two together.
No.
Again, it's the same thing as Ezra. You're more concerned about you than you are the house of God. So.
Yeah.
Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Can someone read verses 1 to 8? Chapter 2, verses 1 to 8.
In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought for him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before, so the king asked me, "Why does your face look so sad when you're not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of the heart." I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, "May the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my fathers are buried lies in ruin and the gates have been destroyed by fire?" The king said to me, "What do you want? Or what is it you want?" How far did it go?
To verse 8.
Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king, "If it pleases the king, and if your servants are found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city of Judah where my fathers are buried, so that I can rebuild it." Then the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked me, "How long will this journey take, and when will you get back?" It so pleased the king to send me, so I set a time. I also said to him, "If it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governor of the Trans-Euphrates, so that they will provide me a safe conduct until I arrive in Judah. And I may have a letter to Asaph, keeper of the king's forest, so he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel, by the temple, and for the city wall, and for the residence, I will occupy, because the gracious hand of God was upon me. The king granted my request. So I went to the governors of the Trans-Euphrates and asked and gave them the king's letter. The king also sent army officers and cavalry with me.
Kind of the opposite of Ezra. Remember Ezra went out. He didn't. He was just the Israelites, right, by themselves. But now he has an army with him. Understood. Now, verse 1 of chapter 2 says, in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year, okay, of King Artaxerxes. Now, remember, in chapter 1, it's the month of Chislev, okay, which is the 9th month. And now we have the month of Nisan, which is the first month of the year, January. So 4 months, okay? So chapter 1, chapter 2, there's a 4-month gap. Okay, and then in verse 2, notice how he says this: why is your face sad, seeing that you are not sick? There is nothing but sadness of your heart. Wow. Now, Nehemiah must have been really grieved, because if you are, just thinking very practically out loud, if you're working for someone of high profile or whatever it is, and you want to be of your best behavior. You want to present yourself as if you're good all the time, right? You don't want to be a hindrance or disturbance to the king, to the monarch. But I think he was so grieved that you could see it all over him, right? And the king was able to identify it.
The language in this chapter, doesn't that mimic Daniel? Oh, may the king live forever.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Is that where it's from? I forgot. Like, it was in Daniel, right? Oh, may the king live forever.
Multiple times.
Or is that Esther? I forgot.
Probably as both.
Yeah.
Well, remember, these kings weren't. They weren't Cyrus. Okay, if it was Cyrus, your demeanor would be a little different, right? But these kings, it's like, no, let's kill this guy. Let's throw him in the fire. Like Nebuchadnezzar, right? Nebuchadnezzar's like, yeah, let's throw him in the fire. Let's feed him to the lions. So you are on your best behavior here, right? Like, again, remember in Joseph, the cupbearer was in jail, right? And he could have died. So I'm just saying, like, the same thing could have happened to Nehemiah. So he's putting the 2 and 2 together. Remember, Joseph, they already knew the story of Joseph. Guys online, we're at a minute right now. Let's get off. We'll come right back on, okay? All right.
So I should know this, but what wall to what temple is the Wailing Wall at?
One more time.
What's the Wailing Wall? What temple did that wall belong to?
That's Herod's temple.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of debatable. I gotta use the restroom a bit, but Zerubbabel's temple, this temple right here, what happened was that Herod the builder, okay, that's the guy that wanted to kill the Jesus when he was a baby, right?
Right.
So he died, but he was hi Matthew, he was a builder. Like, even when you go to Israel, he's got like a castle by the sea. Like, he made it's unbelievable. Like, even the architecture, like, those pools beside the ocean.
Yeah.
He built that like 2,000 years ago, and it's still there.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Who
Like,
built it?
Herod,
Oh.
this guy. So what he did was that he wanted favor with the Jews, so he took Zerubbabel's temple and he built over it this grand. So this whole debate: is there 3 temples or is there 2? Right? It's hard. To, I'll say 3 for the sake of like builders, right? But it's like, have you seen? There's this show. It's a really philosophical discussion, but like it's a show back 15-20 years ago called Pimp My Ride. Have you guys heard of that? Pimp My Ride.
Yeah, I heard that.
So it was a show of these guys in Detroit, Michigan, and they would get like someone's car that's on the verge of like dying, right? Some beat up car, and they would take the same car, but they would soup it up. So new tires, new rims, there'd be like a bath in there, like seriously, like it would just like a fridge. They were like TV, like this is 15 years ago, but it's the same car, right? So is it the same car or is it a new car? Right? Whatever is your answer, it's the same thing with like the temple. As far as Herod's temple, so the temple that we have today is remains from Herod's temple. So the Romans wiped that out again in 70 AD, and then it was just the remains there. Yeah. So I sent you guys photos of this temple's walls, and like it's all intact, but like you go there, it's nowhere near. You go nowhere near as far as like what it was like intact, because like.
Can you still go to Iran and see that site?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Susa, yeah. Yeah, you can still see Nebuchadnezzar's temple today.
Is it in Tehran?
I don't know. But Nebuchadnezzar's temple, I don't know if you guys...
You can go, but it might be dicey at this point.
You might get your...
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't go now. They might keep you there for a while.
So Nebuchadnezzar's temple, it's underground, and what they did was Saddam Hussein is he took the actual temple of Nebuchadnezzar and rebuilt it. So it's there, right? If you go to Iraq right now, the Nebuchadnezzar's temple is there. And what he did was he got stones, and because remember he believed he was a reincarnated version of Nebuchadnezzar, Saddam Hussein, and he has bricks there today. It's like it's an amalgamation of Saddam Hussein's temple and King Nebuchadnezzar's temple. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's called Palace of Darius in Susa.
Yeah, so Darius, he was the one that built this temple. Yeah.
And
So-
it's like north of Basra.
So before Artaxerxes, before him was Xerxes, and before him was Darius, and he was the one that built that. Yeah.
It's an Iraqi city, so you have to fly into Basra.
So Nehemiah, okay, grieved, heartbroken. This is 4 months later too. Okay, so you expect some therapy, some healing. No, there were no healing that happened because again, you could still see it, right? And the king was able to identify it. Remember, we are leaky vessels. Okay, we are leaky vessels, meaning that whatever's in your heart will leak. It will. Through a lifetime, it will leak. Meaning, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Your words. You could see it from where someone puts their money, where someone puts their time, where someone their demeanor, right? You could just see it. So I'm saying all this because we live. Some people I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm great. No, I'm good. But it's like you don't seem. You know what I mean?
That's so prevalent in our culture.
It's Proverbs again. 15:13 says, "A glad heart makes a cheerful face. A glad heart makes a cheerful face." But by sorrow of heart, the spirit is crushed. So again, let's take the logic. A glad heart makes a cheerful face. A sad heart makes a not so cheerful face too, right? Just like Nehemiah. Okay, remember we're leaky vessels. Okay, the real us will eventually come out through time. Now in verse 3-5, Nehemiah he requests to build the rebuilding of the temple, and from verse 6-8, King Artaxerxes he answers in the positive to Nehemiah's request. Wow. So Nehemiah is now he has a ticket all the way to Jerusalem to rebuild this temple, and he's going to be funded. He's going to have bodyguards with him. He will be protected because he was the cupbearer of Artaxerxes. Okay, and then he says later on, what does he say? The hand of God was on me. The good hand of God was upon me. Very similar language to Ezra. Okay. So remember, whenever it said the hand of God was upon someone, it meant the favor of God was upon their life. God was going to accomplish his will through that person. And we talked about last week, there's a distinction between the hand of God is on me versus I'm doing it in the name of God. We always assume someone doing the name of God means the hand of God is upon them. That's not true, right? A lot of people do things in the name of Jesus, in the name of God, but God's hand was never part of it. It was all them, right? Acts 19, 7 sons of Sceva, they're Jewish exorcists. They saw Jesus, they saw Peter, they saw Paul. And it's like, I want to do that too. They don't even believe in Jesus. They say, in the name of Jesus, and then also in the name of that guy Paul that We command you to leave. And the demons looked at them and just said, Jesus I know, Paul I recognize, but who are you? And they just assaulted them. Right? So I'm just saying, like, there's a difference between someone says they're going to do it in the name of God. Someone has a mission statement versus the hand of God is upon them. Remember this, that when the hand of God is upon someone, he is accomplishing his purpose, and he can use a believer and he can use an unbeliever. Cyrus, Nebuchadnezzar, right? To do his will, to accomplish big things, right? We think, I gotta go to seminary, I have to do this, if you want to do it to learn, so be, but to think that I need to go through all this in order for God to use, no, God can use the nurse, God could use the baker, God could use the person that works at the coffee shop to do mighty great things. What was it, Billy Graham? He got saved by a milk, one of the guys that distributes milk, right? So,
Oh man.
yeah, the milk. So I'm just saying, you just don't know what God could do. If God, his hand is upon you, his will be accomplished, right? Even a donkey, okay?
Yeah, do you know that when I was working at this one hospital, and I don't know that much about Oral Roberts, but you used to be able to purchase the right hand of God in the form of a red glove. And because I had a lady who was extremely sick after delivering a baby, and I went in the room and she had this red hand sitting on her chest, and I go, what on earth is that? And they said, oh, the family brought that in. It's from Oral Roberts. It's the hand of God. I don't know if anybody had ever heard that. I never heard it.
Okay, so
Sorry.
the hand of God it's a figurative term. It's called anyways. It's God doesn't have a hand.
He's invisible.
Right? He's a spirit. John 4:24. Right? It's terminal. Like the Psalm says, he will cover you with his wings. He's got a chicken now, like right?
Oh my god.
No, it's figurative, right? Does he have a beak? Like no, it's figurative. All right. So the hand of God upon someone. Okay. Now, think of Nehemiah though. Okay, he's a cupbearer. Minding his business, his brother comes, gives him the news, and that changes everything. And then now, 4 months later, he doesn't come to the king and ask. The king sees it on his face, and he kind of gives him a little nudge. Hey, what's in your heart about my friend? Right? And then it eventually comes out. And then now Nehemiah is on this journey to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Did he plan that? No, it just happened. It just happened through time, right? The most significant moments in our lives typically happen unexpectedly. Okay? The most significant moments in a person's life, this is just general, happen unexpected. I'm sure there's cases where someone planned it and it went their way, but most people it doesn't. They plan things, it doesn't happen their way. The most significant things that happen always happen unexpectedly, right? Without someone's will, without them even knowing it. Again, back to Nehemiah. He would never expect it, right? 5 months before that. Look at all the biblical characters, right? You look at Joseph. Did he plan to? No. There was always a moment that it just changed their life, and it was always something negative, but it was like an unexpected moment. Like Joseph was like what? His brothers wanted to kill him. He never planned that. Potiphar's wife accused him of rape. Now he's in jail. But those two moments, never unexpected, made him really become the second command to Pharaoh. Right? You look at King David. What was a moment that really changed his life? He was a shepherd. And his dad, Jesse, was like, hey, could you bring this food to your brothers who are in war? Okay. Right? And then what happens? That was it. It's always this one moment.
What happened when he went to bring the food?
Oh, and then there was this war. But so it was called Champion Warfare. Champion Warfare. Have you seen the film Troy? Troy? Have you seen the film Troy? It's the very opening scene with Brad Pitt, and there's this giant muscular guy. And what Champion Warfare was, instead of our so all our soldiers, there's dads, and they have kids, they have wives, they're newlyweds, and there's these guys, and they're the same thing. They have kids. You want to be sympathetic even in a war. Instead of everyone fighting, why don't we just get the best fighter here, and you get the best fighter there, and the winner represents the whole army. That was champion warfare. So in the very beginning of Troy, it's Brad Pitt versus this guy, and he beats him. But the point is, once he beat him, that's it. So Goliath is this giant, and you know the story of David and Goliath, and that's what happened.
Yeah, they should still do champion warfare today. I feel like it would just solve a lot of problems.
I don't know. It's all our wars are ideological and Twitter and tweeting, right? But again, David, it was outside of the control. Esther, right? How did she get in that position? Vashti, and remember Vashti, the queen.
Yeah.
When the king Xerxes was like, "Hey, I want to bring out my beautiful wife," and she's like, "I'm not coming out." Wait, you said no to me? Is that right? And you had to get rid of her, and because you got rid of her, you had to bring Esther. But it was unexpected, right? Paul, right? He's thinking, I'm going to go kill Christians, and right. So what I'm saying is, it happens outside of someone's control. It happens unexpectedly. You guys, Tucker Carlson, he's guys. He says that whenever people reach a level of success, it always happens unexpectedly to that person, and it's true, right? If you look at all of our lives, like where we're at today, I'm sure we didn't plan everything, right? Things happen unexpectedly. Okay, so I'm saying the same thing is true with Nehemiah. Okay, any questions? No. Okay, verse 9 to 16. Verse 9 to 16. Can someone read 9 to 16?
Then I came to the governors of the provinces beyond the river and gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent with me officers and the army of horsemen. And when Sanballat and Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard about it, it was very displeasing to them that someone had come to seek the welfare of the sons of Israel. So I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. And I rose in the night, I and a few men with me. I did not tell anyone what my God was putting into my mind to do for Jerusalem, and there was no animal with me except the animal on which I was riding. So I went out at night by the valley gate in the direction of the dragon's well and onto the refuse gate, inspecting the walls of Jerusalem which were broken down and its gates which were consumed by fire. Then I passed on to the fountain gate and the king's pool, and there was no place for my mount to pass. To which one?
It's 16.
Okay. So when I went up at night by the rain and inspected the wall, then I heard the valley gate again and returned. Then I entered the valley gate again and returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I had done, nor had I as yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, or the rest who did the work.
So now he's going to work here, but he does something very, very unique. Look at verse 11. So I went to Jerusalem there for 3 days. Then I arose in the night, and I and a few men with me, and I told no one what my God had put into my heart to do to Jerusalem. There was no animal with me, but the one which I rode. So he's really incognito. He doesn't even tell what kind of animal. Most likely a horse or a camel. And then he says in verse 13, I went out by night by the valley gate to the dragon spring and to the dung gate, and I inspected the walls of Jerusalem there that were broken down, and to the gates he had been destroyed by fire. Okay, so what's Nehemiah doing now? So he goes at night, and for 3 days, he's inspecting the walls.
Yeah, seeing what can be done with it,
Ah.
rebuild it.
So, remember, in the same chapter, in verse 5, we had prayer. He's praying. And in verse 11 to 16, we have planning. So this is what he's doing, guys. He's doing this, guys online. He's doing this. He's not telling anyone. Very incognito. Right? He's planning. He's going around at night and he's testing. He's seeing how much bricks we need here, how much bricks we don't need here, and he's not. This is all in his head, right? It's just him, right? He doesn't even identify the animal, right? But he's planning. He's planning. He's planning the amount of bricks. He's planning what to do, and he's writing things down. He's inspecting, and he's writing things down so he can give to the governor, so we can get the supplies. Remember, he's fully funded by Artaxerxes. Okay, remember, planning does not mean that one does not trust God. Okay, just because you plan, it does not mean that you don't trust God. Because I say that because it's a common thing, right? If someone plans, it's like, oh, you don't trust the Lord. It's like, maybe I'm trusting God by planning, right? There's a big difference between I'm planning with a controlling heart versus I'm planning with a surrendered heart. Big difference. Planning is not the issue. It's what's the posture of your heart. Again, I can plan and I can have a controlling heart, meaning if it doesn't happen my way, I'm going to freak out, right? That's a person that has control issues. Versus I'm planning with a surrendered heart, and whatever the results are, I give them to God. Okay? Prayer, the balance. There's a balance between prayer and planning. Proverbs 29:18 says, "Where there is no vision, the people cast off restraint, but blesses he who heeds wisdom's instructions." Okay? So Nehemiah is going out and he's planning very, very subtly. Okay? Also, can someone finish off and read verse 17 to 20? 17 to 20.
And I said to them, "You see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace." I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me, and what the king had said to me. They replied, "Let us start rebuilding." So they began this good work. But then Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it. They mocked and ridiculed us. "What is this you are doing?" they asked. "Are you rebelling against the king?" I answered them by saying, "The God of heaven will give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding. But as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic right to it."
So look at verse. Let's compare verse 17. Then I said to them, "You see the trouble we are in, how Jerusalem lies in ruins with its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem that we may no longer suffer derision." Okay? So what we have here is first, what does it say in verse 12? Then I arose at night, and it says, and I told no one what God had put into my heart to do for Jerusalem. He didn't tell anyone in verse 12, okay? He's very quiet. And then verse 17, he tells people. Right? So he's quiet at one point, and then he tells people at one point. He doesn't tell people what God put on his heart, and then he tells people what God put on his heart. There is wisdom of being slow to speak and quick to listen. Okay? There is wisdom of being slow to speak and quick to listen. Nehemiah kept silent at the right time. Okay? Remember, verse 12, he was silent. I told no one what God put into my heart to do in Jerusalem. Then he speaks. He opens his mouth and he tells people what's on his heart. Verse 17, "Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem." That's what God put on his heart. Okay? Why didn't Nehemiah tell anyone before? Why was he so quiet before?
Because he was doing the work secretly that he was told.
Okay. Remember,
He was planning.
It does remember. It does mention a couple of characters in verse 10 and at the end of the chapter. There was these.
They were trying to stop him.
We're gonna have a. Remember, there's always bad guys in a story, right? The bad guys in this story: Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. Dun dun dun. Right. I found photos I was gonna put in, but it was kind of cartoonish.
Who were the adversity? Who is it?
Oh,
The
Where?
Horonite.
Sanballat.
Where is it? Say that. Like,
It's in verse 10.
okay.
Okay. Then, but within Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite, and then again in verse 19. But when Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite, servant, and Geshem, the Arab. Okay, so these guys are governors in the area that were not Jewish, but they opposed the rebuilding of the walls, right? Because again, it's one thing where you see an opposing group become successful, right? You want to tear them down, right? And if I can't do it by force, I'm going to use my words. That's exactly what we see here. Okay? So Nehemiah knows this. That's why it's mentioned in verse 10 earlier. And he was quiet for 3 days. He didn't even tell. It doesn't even say, that, again, the animal. He was just so quiet about what he was doing. But he was planning in his head. Okay? Remember, wisdom is speaking less. It's foolishness to speak much. Okay? It is wise to speak less. It is foolish to speak a lot. Okay, there's wisdom in being silent, right? There's wisdom in when you do talk, it's the right words versus you just talk all the time and you make no sense, you get yourself into trouble, right? That's the danger of speaking too much. We can, our friend Peter, right? We know this from Peter, right? 3 times, no, he always spoke, right? There's this one passage in Mark 9 where he saw the transfiguration, and then he saw Jesus, and he saw Moses, and he saw Elijah the prophet, and he says, Rabbi, it's okay. He says, Rabbi,
Last time it was so hard to move.
Oh my gosh.
Peter says, Rabbi, it's good to hear. Let us make tents. One for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. It's verse 5 of Mark 9. And then it says in verse 6, for he did not know what to say, for they were all afraid. So it says, for Peter did not know what to say, but he's saying something. So he has no clue. Like it's telling the apostle.
Where did it say that?
Mark 9.
Oh.
So I think we've all been there, let's be honest.
Dude,
Where
all the time.
we're in a situation we have no clue what to say, and we just say something. Maybe just
People do that at like funerals all the time. They just say dumb stuff and it like.
right.
Did you send that to us?
What was it?
It says better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt.
Right, that's Proverbs, right? But it's true. Like Peter, a classic example. Like he didn't know what to say, but he made a suggestion. It's like, why did you say that, Peter? But again, we all do that. Like it's like we want to feed the image that we have, that people view us, or we want, there's many reasons. But
awkward silence when nobody says.
Yeah, maybe you just want to make the conversation. Sometimes it might be even innocent reasons too. It's just like, hey, like I got quiet. I just I want to say something, right? You don't know, but again, Peter was that guy. Also, the minute Jesus says, "I'm going to be crucified," who opened his mouth? No, Lord, Peter, no, you're not going to get crucified. What does Jesus say? Get behind me, Satan. Right?
What verse is it in Mark 9?
Mark 9, 5, 6. Verse 5 and 6. Okay? And the classic illustration of Peter you're going to deny me, right? He's like, no, Lord, I'm not going to deny you. I will never deny you. I will never. Right? Hey, weren't you with him? No. Right? But wait.
For you did not know what to say.
But like, if Peter never said that, meaning that I'm not going to leave you, we hold him accountable even 2,000 years later. He's a classic illustration of speaking too quickly. But if he was cowardly in his heart, then he should have just, not said. But when you open your mouth, guess what you do? You hold yourself accountable to those words. And when your actions don't line up, people are like, huh? And you look at the two, right? Kind of like Peter. If he never said anything, we would never hold him accountable, right? So it's wise to be silent. Who was another disciple? One of the three that was he barely spoke. You barely hear. And then this person said this. John.
Stephen?
Remember in the Gospel of John? It was the disciple that he loved the most. The disciple he loved the most. The disciple he loved the most. But you barely hear John say anything. I don't know if you noticed that. He was young at the time. He was very young. He was a kid. But my point is, like, there's wisdom. None of us are like, hey, remember that guy John that spoke to? We look at Peter, right? So again, the classic illustration of there is wisdom in being slow to speak and quick to listen. It is foolish to always speak fast. Proverbs 29:20 says, "Do you see a man who is hasty in his words? There is more hope for a fool than for him." Okay. Proverbs 17:27, "Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding." Okay.
What did Peter say that Jesus was like, "Get behind me, Satan"?
Oh, so after they recognize him as the Messiah, he started, like, you'll notice, he'll start talking about crucifixion, because before he was very silent. But even Jesus knew about this principle. He was very quiet. He didn't say anything about his crucifixion. It was the minute they started talking, this is the Messiah right here. And the minute he started talking about him being the Messiah, he would link his crucifixion to it, and their hearts would come out. And Peter would be like, "You're not going to be crucified. It's not in the Torah. It's not in the Tanakh. It's," right? And then that's where Jesus rebuked him. Yeah. That's the essence of why the Messiah came.
But what was he saying, like that? Like he was just bringing up the crucifix. Like I don't understand what was wrong with saying that. Like
What? Because
that wasn't God's plan.
yeah, that was the plan of God was for him to die on the cross. And Peter.
What was Peter saying then?
You're not going to die on the cross.
Oh, that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Who
I didn't
from the
realize.
beginning of the temptation
Because
did not want him to die on the cross? The enemy. If you bow down to me,
Yeah.
right? And then Satan was speaking. He was whispering through Peter's mouth.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So remember this: the enemy could take your gifts and use them against you. Okay. The enemy could take your gifts and use them against you or God. Meaning, look at Peter. Peter was a speaker. Look at the book of Acts. God turned Peter around, and he uses words for the good, right? So I'm just saying, it's a classic example where the enemy used the words of Peter against Christ. Okay, back to Proverbs 17:28 says, "Even a fool keeps silent." Oh, this is it. "Even a fool keeps silent who is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent." So a fool. So if someone's a fool, let's just say they had a canker sore, or they bit their lip, or something like that, right? And they just can't talk, and they're just sitting in a room. But we all know they're a fool. They seem intelligent because they're quiet, right? That's what Solomon is saying, right? Even a fool can be considered intelligent or wise by him not saying anything. Okay, meaning that there's wisdom in that. Okay, Ecclesiastes 5:3, for a dream comes with much business, and a fool's voice with many words. Okay, one more, Ecclesiastes 10:14, a fool multiplies words, though no one knows what is to be, and who can tell him what will be after him. Okay, our generation, I'll say millennials, is our form of words, the way we like to craft words, Twitter, Instagram, we like to blog, we like to vlog, right? We like to capture everything. And let me tell you this, sure, people do it for fun, but it has got people in so much trouble, right? By a tweet that they posted 15 years ago will come back and bite them, right?
Yeah.
And again, I think there's wisdom when someone is just silent, right? But people who are just they project everything. Hey guys, I'm taking the second bite of my ice cream. It's like everything needs to be documented and projected to the world. I think there's a sense of being unwise in those situations. Okay? Anyways, there is wisdom in speaking less, and there's foolishness in speaking too much. Nehemiah was silent at the right time and spoke at the right time because he knew there were enemies. Okay? Any questions?
There's so rich. There's just so much good stuff in the Bible. It's crazy. It's not crazy. It's just there's just so much in there. It's pretty amazing.
Now, chapter 3. Okay, we're not going to read this. It's one of those genealogies with funny names, and all of us are going to have to pause and.
I'll read it.
No, it's okay. It's 32 verses, but if you know what, how about this? Just read the first 5 verses, Kevin.
Let's see if I can
So
do
we
it
get a feel of it.
perfectly.
So I can use the restroom. So the first 5 verses.
Yeah, let's see if I can do it. Oops, I'm in Mark 9. Is it chapter what?
3.
3.
1 to 5.
Then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brothers, the priests, and they built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and set its doors. They consecrated it as far as the Tower of the 100, as far as the Tower of Hananel. And next to him, the men of Jericho built, and next to them, Zechar, the son of Imri, built. The sons of Hesenah built the fish gate. They laid its beams and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars next to them. Merimoth, the son of Uriah, the son of Hekaz, repaired. And next to them, Meshulam, the son of Berechiah, son of Meshad of Bel, repaired. And next to them, Zadok, the son of Baana, repaired. And next to them, the Tekoites repaired, but their nobles would not stoop to serve their lord. That's interesting.
So, what we have in chapter 3, 32 verses. We don't have to read all of it, but here we have the rebuilding of the temple, of the walls. Now, if you look at all, it'll say like the sheep gate, the fish gate, the dung gate, the fountain gate, the broad gate, the sheep gate again, the water gate.
Is that just different like sections where the gate was used for the fish?
They were just different sections of the walls. So if you look at the slide that I sent you guys, look at so we have him as the cupbearer, okay, and then we have him building, and then here these 2 slides right here. It's the first one, Jerusalem in the time of Nehemiah, and it lists all the sections of the gate. So the east gate, the horse gate, the water gate, and whenever it was named, but whenever it mentioned like the horse gate or like the east, there was always some relevance to it. Like the fish gate was most likely that's where they would walk. Fishermen would go. You know what I mean? There's always a significance to it, but. Yeah, and then the next slide is a book I was reading, but like it lists. This is all chapter 3. It goes from 1 to 41 at the very bottom, 1 to 41, and it'll pinpoint all the parts from this chapter, all 32 verses with the 41. So it's like where they were and all that. So
it's kind of a weird configuration,
Yeah, I have one over the other, like the
Well-
old one
it looks like a
comparatively.
yeah.
The modern one is much larger and in straight angles,
Yep. It's different now.
whereas
So remember, it was destroyed, right? So they just have remains from whatever 2,000 years ago. But again, like they might have to do the same thing with the southern wall, whoever the southern border here. Like if you know what I mean, there's sections that illegal immigrants just run through, and you know it needs more help. They're gonna have to have names for it.
Yeah, like the Rio Grande or
Yeah.
Eagle Pass. I think
Yeah.
that's one of them.
So, okay. One thing we can learn from chapter 3 is the Jethro principle, and the Jethro is the father-in-law of Moses. Okay, and it was one of the first principles of a leader can't do everything on their own, even building, right? And Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, saw that he was tired. He couldn't manage 2 million people on his own, and he was doing it. Sure, he had the power of God, but he wanted to incorporate some wisdom. So he says, distribute your power. Like let's have every person has limitations, but so we need to distribute what you could do to your actions to other people.
Where did they discover that part? Like in chapter 3?
Yeah.
Like, is there a verse that says that? Or?
No. It just in general. So like even the concept of federalism in politics, like again back in the day it was just a monarch, but then like we see in the book of Daniel there was governors, there were satraps, there was a distribution of power. That's federalism, right? The relationship between the federal government, the states, but like you distribute power. It's usually more healthier, right? And it's the same thing here, is that Nehemiah distributes his power to other people. Remember, he planned. Remember, it started with himself.
Yeah.
He was going around at night for 3 days, and he was making a plan. Okay, thanks, Elaine. Okay. Chapter 4, we'll finish here, okay? Chapter 4, can someone read 1 to 14? Chapter 4, verses 1 to 14.
Now when Sanballat heard that we were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. And then he said in the presence of his brothers and of the army of Samaria, "What are these feeble Jews doing?" Oh my gosh. Will they restore it for themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they finish it up in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish and burn ones at that? Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, "Yes,
Okay, all right.
what they are building, if a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own heads and give them up to be plundered in the land where they are captives. Do not cover their guilt, and let not their sin be blotted out from your sight, for they have provoked you to anger in the presence of the builders." So we built the wall, and the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. But when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the repairing of the walls of Jerusalem was going forward and that the breaches were beginning to be closed, they were very angry, and they were all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause confusion in it. And we prayed to our God and set a guard as a protection against them day and night. In Judah it was said, "The strength of those who bear the burdens is failing. The strength of those who bear the burdens is failing. There is too much rubble. By ourselves we will not be able to rebuild the wall." And our enemies said, "They will not know or see till we come among them and kill them and stop the work." And at that time the Jews who lived near them came from all directions and said to us 10 times, "You must return to us." So in the lowest parts of the space behind the wall, in open places, I stationed the people by their clans, with their swords, their spears, and their bows. And I looked, arose and said to nobles and to the officials and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes.
Okay, continual opposition. Okay, we have our friends, our new characters, Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem. Most people don't know who they are, but like they were the enemies in this book. Okay, look at verse 2, and he said, in the presence of the brothers of the army of Samaria, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it for themselves? Will they sacrifice? Well, again, constant, just negativity after negativity. You know what I mean? It's just one thing after another. Verse 3, Tobiah, the Ammonite, was beside him and said, yes, what they are doing, if a fox goes up, it will break down their stone wall, right? A fox is a small animal. It's equivalent of saying if a fly were to go on top of that wall, it would break down, right? It's useless, right? This is it's a discouragement, internal discouragement that Nehemiah is facing, and then it kind of goes to violence. So it's first slander. We talked about slander last week, and then it goes to, all right, if it doesn't work out verbally, then we might have to come in at night, or we might have to attack them physically, assault them, murder, right? Because they did not want this plan to go by. Opposition will continually happen in life. The question is, are we prepared to handle it? Are we prepared to deal with it? If you look at the nation of Israel and their history, continual opposition, right? Slavery for 400 years under Pharaoh. You think that they're going to run to the land flowing with milk and honey next week. 40 years, wilderness, complaining. The Amalekites are fighting them. And then finally Joshua and this new generation. More, it's just one group after another, and it's no different from our lives as far as opposition, as far as hardship. I remember there was a lie, I believe, in my early 20s, right? I think I went through a rough patch, a rough season, and I came out, and I remember I told myself, I'm never going to deal with a hard, rough patch like I was victorious over this one. It just keeps coming and coming and coming. And the question is, how will we handle it? Instead of avoiding, people becoming very avoidant of the situation, how could I handle it going through it, right? And it's more internal character that's built up during these moments, right? So it's like Nehemiah, right? It's like, Zerubbabel, the first batch, they're there. The Samaritans come and all of a sudden they cause problems. Ezra comes in, the second batch, another group causes problems. Now we have the third, Nehemiah, and now we have another group causing problems too. Okay? Let's finish here. 15 to 23. Can someone read that? 15 to 23.
When our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had frustrated their plans, they all returned to the wall, each to his work. From that day on, half my servants worked on construction and half held the spears, shields, bows, and coats of mail. And the leaders stood behind the whole house of Judah who were building on the wall. Those who carried burdens were loaded in such a way that each labored on the work with one hand and held his weapon with the other. And each of the builders had his sword strapped with his side while he built. The man who sounded the trumpet was beside me, and I said to the nobles and the officials, to the rest of the people, the work is great and widely spread, and we are separated on the wall far from one another. In the place where you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally us there, our God will fight for us. So we labored at the work, and half of them held the spears from the break of dawn until the stars came out. I said to the people at the time, let every man and his servant pass the night within Jerusalem, and they may be a guard for us by night, and they may labor by day. So neither I nor my brothers, nor my servants, nor the men of the guard who followed me. None of us took off our clothes. Each kept his weapon at his right hand.
Okay. We have a case here for the Second Amendment. Okay. Right? But here we have the three guys of Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. So now it goes from verbal slander to now they're threatening physical harm upon them. Well, guess what Nehemiah and his workers respond to? Now they're going to bring weapons.
They have their hammers.
Right? Is that they have swords and they have shovels. And half of them have swords, half of them shovels. As they're working, there's those who are protecting them. Okay? So, remember, evil doesn't just cease on its own. It's a common lie. Evil doesn't just cease. It always needs to be stopped by an external force of good. Always. Historically. Okay? We think that if you see like an evil group just living life, it's eventually, they're eventually going to get tired. No. It doesn't work like that. Evil doesn't just cease. It always needs to be stopped by an external force of good. Always. Okay? Again, this is, think of Hitler. And Winston, again, he was evil. He wasn't just going to stop. He needed to fight Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was the one that stepped up, and that's when things turned around. Right? So if we see all the evil that's happening around us, these kids looting and all the evil that we see around us, it's not just going to stop. It's going to get worse if we allow people to persist in that form of behavior. How things will change, there needs to be an external force of good. Better laws, better lawyers, better journalists, good politicians, the church, and if anything, needs to arise. And if an external force of good, okay? An external force of good. This is why we should be pro-police officer. We should be pro-military, right? So again, it's the same thing here in Nehemiah. There's a philosopher by the name of Edmund Burke who said the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Okay? So remember that. Evil doesn't just cease. It doesn't just stop. Remember, look at the history of the nation of Israel. There was always one group coming. And these three guys wouldn't just stop. They would get worse. But you need an external force of good to destroy evil. Okay? Anyways, we're at 7:51 right now. So these 4 chapters, if anything, we can summarize as far as there's a problem. There's a man that's brokenhearted because of the problem. Prayer, planning, a gathering of community, and the problem solved. Okay? Nehemiah. He's brokenhearted over the problem. There's no walls. He prays, he plans, he gathers a community of those who see the vision, have the same heart as him, and he solves the problem. He builds a wall. It took him 52 days to build the wall. 52 days to build that wall. Well, he wasn't there by himself. Chapter 3, he had all those people helping him out.
It's like a month and a half. It's not even that long.
Very fast.
It's crazy.
In the midst of opposition. Okay? So despite opposition, God will always accomplish his will. Okay? And this is the very plan of God for it to happen. All right? So we'll continue next week. So finish this.